I've got some big news to share with you all. I am now a full-time missionary, and it's been a while since I've done a personal update episode. So today I want to explain a bit about what I'm doing now, apart from hosting this podcast, and how you can be a part of it. Welcome to Student Ministry Connection. Welcome to Student Ministry Connection, a podcast for those who serve in student ministry, want to connect, and desire to grow. My name is Steve Cullum, and I've served in student ministry for about 23 years now. Around 3 of those years were as a volunteer, and around 20 years as a quote-unquote professional, where it was my primary job. And I've had the opportunity to serve in Illinois, where I grew up and attended college and seminary, to the Boston suburbs of southern New Hampshire, where I was given the opportunity to start a brand new student ministry at a new church plant, to Colorado, where I served in a larger church as their youth pastor from 2017 to 2023. And yes, I did say that in past tense because God has recently called me to take a huge step of faith to serve Him as a full-time missionary moving forward. And I want to tell you all about that on this episode. But before we do that, let's thank the sponsor of this episode of the podcast. G-Shades is a youth ministry curriculum and teaching strategy focused on helping students see everyday life situations through the lens of the gospel. G-Shades has options to fit everyone as well, with 3 plans to choose from. This curriculum gives you the resources that you need to do what you do better. Do you need message outlines, a discussion guide, and a game? That's just $20 a month. If you're looking for a higher production value, including bumper videos, Instagram devotionals, and parent guides, that's $30 a month. And if you want an affordable, engaging video curriculum, G-Shades has you covered for only $40 a month. You will not find a better youth ministry video curriculum at that price point anywhere. Head over to gshades.org, that's GSHADES.org, to download Season 4 of G-Shades curriculum and use the promo code CONNECTION at checkout to receive an extra $20 off your order. G-Shades, seeing life through the lens of the gospel. Thank you, G-Shades, for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. You can find the link to G-Shades in the podcast show notes. Back in 1998, as a high school student, I switched churches, I got baptized, and I attended summer camp for the very first time. This series of events set me on this lifelong path dedicated to Christian ministry. Specifically, I felt God calling me to serve teenagers and families. So after volunteering as much as I could as a high school student, I headed off to Bible college to study youth ministry. While I was there, I continued to volunteer in local churches and in outreach ministry to high school students and in several camps. And eventually, I would begin my first paid ministry. And that began this amazing ride that I've been on ever since. If you'd like to know more about the details about my ministry experience prior to 2017, I would encourage you to check out episode 20 of this podcast, where I dive into more of those details. Over the years, I have been fortunate enough to have an amazing youth ministry professor, along with so many great mentors who were very honest with me. They told me that ministry can sometimes get lonely. And as a naive college student, I had no idea how that could be the case. But I tried not to dismiss their wisdom. And it wasn't too long into my first full-time ministry that I realized exactly what they meant. Sometimes ministry can be difficult, and it's so different than other jobs. We need people around us who also understand what we're going through. We need places to share resources and strategies, and we need people to pray with, and we need friendships. And over those years, I realized that in addition to my passion for reaching teenagers and families, God was building this other passion within me as well. This time it was for my fellow youth leaders, both at my church and beyond. Similar to what I did in high school, I started to get involved wherever I could. I stepped up my training and connection with the leaders at my church. I started and led local networks of youth leaders, and I began speaking at conferences and camps. I tried to take more of an interest in the youth leaders around me. And then I was asked by the National Network of Youth Ministries to lead New Hampshire and then Colorado. And I would go on to serve on a volunteer level there for over 6 years. And through serving in this capacity, I was exposed to even more youth leaders. I've been able to walk beside them through some amazing times, but also through some really hard times. And those hard times can be really tough. I know most of you listening are in ministry, so you know how hard it can be sometimes. And many churches are just not supporting youth leaders the way they should. There's a reason why the average tenure of a youth pastor at a church is around 18 months to 3 years, depending on what statistic you look at. And we all know that you can only do so much in that amount of time. But what if all youth leaders were partnering together to make an impact for Christ? What if all youth leaders were staying in ministry at least twice as long as they are now? What if all youth leaders felt encouraged, equipped, and empowered to make an impact? What if all youth-focused organizations and churches were connected and sharing resources? What if all Christ-following teenagers understood their identity and their purpose? What if all teenagers had the opportunity to hear the gospel from a peer? What if all Christian teenagers were thriving in their faith after graduation? And what if the church was truly united like Jesus prayed for us to be? This is why networking is so important. Since 1981, National Network of Youth Ministries has strived to facilitate healthy networks of youth leaders that are focused on building relationships, praying together, sharing resources, and developing strategies, all for the goal of more teenagers hearing the gospel, responding to Jesus, and making more disciples. If you want to learn more about NNYM, I highly encourage you to sign up for a free membership at nnym.org, check out the About page, and read the book Better Together by Paul Fleischman. We know that youth leaders who are involved in a healthy network will last 2.5 times longer in ministry. This means more students reached, more leaders reached, more community impact, and more combined efforts with other youth leaders in their area. I know from personal experience that I would not have lasted this long in ministry if it wasn't for the connections that I've gotten through local and national networks. Some of my best friends and ministry mentors were there to encourage me and help me in the good and the difficult times. In John 17, Jesus prays this, "My prayer is not for them alone. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one just as we are one, I and them and you and me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Then the world will know that you have sent me and you loved them just as you loved me." So my mission with NNYM is twofold. First, to encourage, equip, and empower youth leaders. And second, to facilitate unity by establishing and supporting healthy networks of youth leaders. And all of this is in order to help every teenager understand and live out their identity and purpose in Christ. Because if healthy youth leaders are united in their effort to reach teenagers, we will see our youth groups and churches changed, we will see our communities changed, and we will see the world changed. I've been so fortunate to see glimpses of what can happen when denominational lines are torn down and when churches and Young Life and FCA and First Priority and Youth for Christ, Youth Alive, and more begin working together to reach even more teenagers in their community together. Serving as a volunteer for NNYM was amazing, but I was limited by my capacity, and now I'm able to do this full time. And I'm seriously dreaming all the time about what could happen. God is calling me to support youth leaders all around my state and all around the country. Both my wife and I have had a passion for missions and mission work for a really long time, but we never felt called out of the country. Lo and behold, God was preparing us for missions the whole time, but just within the United States. And as a missionary, we're going to be working with the local leaders that God has already established to strengthen them to reach more and more teenagers in their communities and help them work together even more for the greater kingdom. At this point, if you're wondering how you can get involved, I have 3 different ways that you can get involved. First, you can sign up to receive our newsletter with stories and prayer updates, and then join us in praying. Second, you can contact me to talk about how you can partner with our ministry directly or arrange us to speak at your event, do a training, or help with coaching or consulting. And third, You and or your church can support this ministry financially by becoming a monthly supporter through reoccurring donations. As my wife and I step out in faith, we know that this is going to be an amazing ride, but we also know it's going to be tough. We know God is going to take care of us in the ministry, but completely trusting God with our financial security is very scary. We've been inspired by so many missionaries who have gone before us, and we trust that God will continue to keep his promise by moving in the hearts of his people to use their collective God-given resources to make this happen. Normally, this is where I would ask you to share the podcast with someone who you think would enjoy it. But today, I want to ask if you would prayerfully consider joining my team. I am thrilled to serve alongside National Network of Youth Ministries and supporting youth leaders, and I would love for you to join me in it. Like I said, you can do that by joining our prayer team or our financial support team, or both. Or you can help by being an advocate for youth leader networks wherever you are. I literally could not do this ministry without support from God, of course, but also from you all as well. So please prayerfully consider joining me in this ministry. You can find a link to all that information in the show notes, but also at stevecullum.com. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. I would also love to make myself available to support you and your ministry in any way that I can. That could be helping with leader training, speaking in a student or leadership event, or just talking over Zoom or at a local coffee shop. God is calling me to serve other youth leaders in this next chapter of my life. So if I can be of any assistance, please, let's connect. And when I think of support, I have got to say thank you again to our longtime sponsor, G-Shades. Be sure to visit their website, gshades.org, and use that promo code CONNECTION to save $20 off your order. They also have a blog over there you should definitely check out. And the founder of G-Shades, Mike Haynes, who has been a guest a couple times on this podcast, also has a book coming out in June 2023 that you definitely want to check out. For those of you who have questions about what this means for the podcast, I am planning to keep this going for the foreseeable future. As you could probably tell, back in 2022 when we rebranded, it was fueled by this desire to connect youth leaders for the greater kingdom. And I'm really excited about where the podcast is moving in the future too. I've been in contact with some great student ministry leaders that I cannot wait for you to hear from. So be sure to subscribe and share this with others to keep this podcast going. Thanks again for being here for this episode and for all of your support. Be sure to stay connected, and may God bless your ministry.